Ever pondered your odds of surviving a round of Russian roulette? Welcome to the world of chance and risk, where the stakes are as high as they can possibly get. The game we're discussing is Russian roulette, a notorious gamble with life itself. The basic premise of the game is chillingly simple. You take a revolver, load a single bullet into one of its 6 chambers, give the cylinder a good spin, aim it at your head, and pull the trigger. It's a game of chance with the most severe consequences, a grim dance with fate where the music is the echo of a single gunshot. The inherent danger and risk involved in such a game are undoubtedly extreme. It's a game that takes the concept of chance and amplifies it with the highest stake there is, your life. So what are the odds? Let's delve into the numbers. To understand the odds, we first need to grasp the basic principles of probability. Probability is essentially a branch of mathematics that deals with the likelihood of different outcomes. It's all about the chances of certain events happening, or not happening. Let's start with the most fundamental concept: an event. An event refers to any specific outcome or combination of outcomes from a random phenomenon. It could be as simple as flipping a coin and getting heads, or as complex as drawing a specific hand in poker. Now, it's crucial to understand that events can be either independent or dependent. Independent events are those where the outcome of one doesn't affect the outcome of another. For instance, the result of one coin flip doesn't influence the next. Each flip is a fresh start, with equal chances of landing heads or tails. On the other hand, dependent events are interconnected. The outcome of one influences the outcome of the next. A classic example is drawing cards from a deck without replacing them. If you draw an ace, the chances of drawing another ace decrease because there's one less ace in the deck. So, how does this relate to Russian roulette? Well, Russian roulette is a chilling game of dependent events. You have a revolver with 6 chambers, one of which is loaded. Each time you pull the trigger, if the gun doesn't fire, the chances of it firing on the next pull increase. This is because there's now one less empty chamber in the mix. It's important to note that even though the odds change with each pull, the game remains incredibly dangerous. The risk increases with each round, making it a perilous gamble. Probability theory gives us the tools to analyze such situations, allowing us to calculate the likelihood of surviving each round. However, remember that while we can calculate odds, they don't predict individual outcomes. They only give us a sense of the average outcome over many repetitions. With these principles in mind, we can begin to calculate the odds. Now let's crunch some numbers. The mathematics behind Russian roulette is fairly straightforward, yet fascinating. You see, when you're first to pull the trigger in a standard 6-chamber revolver, there's only one bullet. This means that you have a 5 out of 6 chance of hearing that chilling click of an empty chamber and breathing a sigh of relief. To put it in percentages, that's approximately 83.33%. Those seem like pretty good odds, right? But here's where the game gets even more interesting. With each pull of the trigger, the odds shift. The bullet doesn't move, so if you survive the first round, the odds of the bullet being in the next chamber increase. After the first round, there are only 5 chambers left, so your odds of survival drop to 4 out of 5 or 80%. As we move into the third round, assuming the bullet still hasn't been fired, the odds drop again. Now it's a 3 out of 4 chance of survival, or 75%. And this pattern continues, with the odds getting slimmer and slimmer with each pull of the trigger. By the time we reach the 6th round, if no one has fired the bullet yet, there's a 100% chance that the next pull of the trigger will fire the bullet. It's a grim prospect, but that's the nature of the game. As you can see, even though the odds of surviving the first round are fairly high, they quickly start to dwindle with each subsequent round. It's a chilling demonstration of how quickly chance can turn against you. But remember, these odds are only valid for one round. What happens if the game continues? Well, that's a question for another scene. For now, let's just say that the longer the game goes on, the more the odds stack against you. But we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that in just a moment. So, stay tuned. As the game continues, the odds begin to stack up against you. Now let's delve deeper into how the odds of surviving decrease with each round. As the game progresses, your chances of encountering the deadly bullet increase. This is due to the concept of cumulative probability, a term you may remember from your high school math class. In simple terms, cumulative probability is the sum of the probabilities of a range of outcomes. In the context of Russian roulette, it's the likelihood that sooner or later you're going to hit the chamber with the bullet. Let's break it down. Say you've survived the first round. You dodged the bullet this time, but the game is far from over. The revolver now has 5 chambers, one of which holds the fatal bullet. This means your chances of survival have decreased from 5 out of 6 to 4 out of 5. In percentage terms, your probability of surviving drops from approximately 83.3% to a less comfortable 80%. Now let's say you're feeling lucky and you survive the second round as well. The odds are now 3 out of 4, or 75%. And with each subsequent round, the odds continue to decrease. By the fourth round, assuming you're still in the game, your survival odds have plummeted to a mere 50%, and that's just considering one round at a time. The cumulative probability of surviving to the fourth round is actually much lower. It's the product of all the previous rounds' probabilities, which in this case is roughly 31.25%. You see, with each pull of the trigger, the risk escalates. The bullet remains waiting in one of the dwindling number of chambers. Each empty click of the hammer is not a victory but a countdown, a reminder that the odds are increasingly stacked against you. The longer the game goes on, the more the odds are stacked against you. So, what's the takeaway from all these numbers? Well, let's recap. We've delved into the world of Russian roulette, a game of chance that can be as intriguing as it is deadly. We've broken down the basics, and we've crunched some numbers. Now, it's time to pull all these threads together to paint a clear picture. The odds of surviving the first round of Russian roulette are 5 out of 6, roughly 83%. That's because there's only one bullet in the 6-chambered revolver. But remember, with each pull of the trigger, the odds decrease. The bullet is always there, waiting, and with each empty click, it's one step closer to its fatal purpose. By the second round, your survival chances drop to about 67%. By the third, they're down to just over 50%, and if you're unfortunate enough to reach the 6th round, well, your odds of survival are 0. That's the grim reality of Russian roulette. But it's not just about numbers, it's about the inherent risk and danger involved in the game. It's a game that plays with life and death, a game where every decision could be your last. It's a game where the stakes are as high as they can possibly get. So we've talked about the odds, but what about the risk? The risk is absolute. There's no way to mitigate it, no way to play it safe. In Russian roulette, every pull of the trigger is a gamble with your life. Let's not forget the human element here. The stress, the adrenaline, the fear, these are not factors that can be quantified, but they are a very real part of the game. They can cloud judgment, lead to rash decisions, and ultimately they can cost lives. In the end, the only surefire way to survive Russian roulette is not to play at all. Remember, life is not a game of chance. It's a precious gift, and it's not worth gambling with. We've crunched the numbers and broken down the odds, but what does it all mean? As we've seen today, the game of Russian roulette is a stark reminder of the profound impact chance and risk can have on our lives. The calculations we've explored are not merely confined to this dangerous game. They reflect a broader picture of life itself. Every day we are faced with choices, some trivial, some life-altering. Each of these choices carries its own set of odds, its own risks, and its own rewards. It's crucial to remember that while we can calculate odds and predict outcomes to some degree, there's always an element of uncertainty. Life, much like Russian roulette, is unpredictable. The key takeaway here is not to fear risk, but to respect it, to make every decision with a clear understanding of its potential consequences. Remember, every decision we make in life comes with its own set of odds. Choose wisely.